I realized I mentioned Evangelion and Hideaki Anno enough on this channel to properly devote more attention to them. So, here are a few details you may or may not know about Neon Genesis Evangelion, the hit anime series that aired from 1995 to 96, and its cinematic finale, 1997's The End of Evangelion. Sometimes people give Eva way more credit than it deserves. No, it did not invent serious anime, not even serious mecha anime, nor was it a purely original work. It draws from a wide variety of sources, and some quite openly, enough for Anno to defend the series against plagiarism accusations back when the show was still hot off the press. Nevertheless, the series was a big deal, and as discussed in the June 1996 edition of Newtype magazine, Evangelion seems to have been developed and released under interesting circumstances. The magazine reads, Neon Genesis Evangelion is the first major wave in the sea of the anime world in more than a decade. It has already been 17 years since the first series of Mobile Suit Gundam was aired. This was the era when teenagers packed theaters to watch Space Battleship Yamato and Galaxy Express 999. The so-called anime boom peaked in 1980 and lasted for 2 to 3 years before and after. Many of today's Newtype readers must have been unborn, or at best, babies. At that time, every teenager accepted anime without any resistance, but later on, watching anime became a special thing for a teenager. Particularly in the mid-1980s, after original video animations. Anime was subdivided to meet the needs of fans, and before we knew it, it had become a genre that ordinary people would never watch. Of course, Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball are popular, but they are just for children, and Hayao Miyazaki's or Studio Ghibli's films bring the ordinary people to theaters during the summer vacations, but they are not for anime fans at all, as a low-risk choice when you go on a date. The film made for anime fans, and even the ordinary people says this is awesome. We have been waiting for such a film to be born. That is Evangelion. Evangelion received enthusiastic support not only from anime fans, but also from ordinary children, adults sensitive to cutting-edge culture, and former fans who returned to anime after a 10-year absence. And the movement continues to grow even after the TV broadcast ended. Have you ever wondered why Shinji and his peers are young teens? Well, in the aforementioned issue of Newtype magazine, Anno shares his reasoning. He explains, I made the main character 14 years old because he is more than a child, less than an adult. You can live alone, and you can live in the company of others. If it was centuries ago, you'd be regarded as an adult. In those days, you had only 50 years to live, so you had to be independent at age 14 or so. Nowadays, people have more than 70 years to live. So if you are Japanese, there are many people who are still dependent on their parents, even when they reach 20 years of age. There is also the problem that parents may be making you dependent on them. They want children to be children forever. Including that, I think 14 years old is appropriate for the theme of the film, because it's an age when you can be mentally independent.
お邪魔します。シンジ君、ここはあなたの家なのよ。ただいま。おかえりなさい。
Anno did not want to produce Evangelion at Gainax. Although Anno co-founded the studio with several friends years earlier, he thought it was too small and too ill-equipped to handle a series the size of Evangelion. Up to that point, the studio had always been on shaky grounds. However, Takashi Sawamura, head of Gainax at the time, convinced Anno to use the talent that was in the studio home. And so, Gainax joined forces with Tatsunoko Production to produce Neon Genesis Evangelion and Production IG to produce The End of Evangelion. Yet, as feared, scheduling and creative mismanagement caused a number of issues. Some of those issues are responsible for the less conventional second half of the series and its infamous final 2 episodes, but Anno's sudden interest in psychology also deserves credit for the sharp change in direction. In the November 1996 edition of Newtype magazine, Anno revealed that he wanted to explore what the human mind is all about inside. He said, I wrote about myself. My friend lent me a book on psychological illness, and this gave me a shock. As if I finally found what I needed to say. Toshio Okada had this to say about the matter. Mr. Anno and his staff couldn't make a good idea for it. He told an anime magazine in Japan that he couldn't make what he wanted because of schedule or budget. But that's not correct. I talked with Mr. Yamaga and Mr. Anno. They said, it's not only a problem of schedule or budget, it's a problem of what the ending is going to be. Mr. Anno couldn't decide. In spite of production troubles and controversial creative decisions, the series was a massive success. However, rarely does throwing more money at irresponsible people result in good things, and the suits at Gainax pocketed or wasted most of the money in bad investments. Meanwhile, the staff and even Anno himself, who at the time paid little attention to the business side of things, were left severely underpaid. His efforts to fix these issues yielded little results, and after having to publicly apologize on behalf of the studio for its infamous 1999 tax evasion scandal, he would ultimately abandon the sinking ship, founding Studio Khara years later. While Anno initially allowed Gainax to retain the merchandising rights to the original TV series out of respect, the studio's continued shenanigans resulted in Anno replacing Gainax's initial credit in the opening of the show with his name, Khara suing Gainax to recover 100 million yen it loaned to the nearly bankrupt studio in 2014, and finally, due to misleading reports in the media causing damage to him and his brand, Anno publicly denouncing and distancing his series from Gainax in December 2019 after the president at the time was brought down for inappropriate conduct with a teenage voice actress. Today, Evangelion in its entirety is owned by Anno and his studio Khara. Gainax has no involvement. Anno did not want toys to be the driving force behind the design of the titular mechs or series. Early in production, as quoted in Neon Genesis Evangelion, the unofficial guide, he said, "With recent robot anime series, there have been too many instances of toy makers sticking their big noses in from the design stage so they can get a spec that is easy to turn into a toy. I don't want any interference from toy makers, so I'm going to design a robot that cannot be turned into a toy." Anno was even reluctant to approve merchandise for the series, and consequently it was hard to come by in the beginning. In a twist of fate, Evangelion was one of the first examples in mech anime where the merchandise for the characters outsold the merchandise for the mechs, and these days, it seems the series is making up for Anno's early reluctance to capitalize on its popularity. It has become one of the biggest media franchises in the world, and the merchandise seems endless. In 1996, Anno commented on the popularity of the series, saying, "It's strange that Evangelion has been a hit. Everyone in it is sick." In Japan, Rei has proven to be the most popular female character of the Evangelion series. The merchandise for the female characters outsold everything else, and Rei's merchandise, especially the merchandise which featured her in bandages, were the hottest selling items. She was described by the media as the girl who manipulates magazine sales at will, the fastest route to the sold out sign, and the premium girl. Rei has consistently ranked at or near the top of popularity charts since her debut, and continues to do so. For example, as late as March 2010, Rei was voted the most popular female character of 1990s anime in a Newtype poll and seems to remain the most dominant Evangelion character when it comes to media exposure. She has inspired so many other anime characters, she has basically become a character archetype. Anno believes he knows the reason for her popularity and has commented on it a few times over the years. In the late 90s, he said, "Rei is very popular. I think that she's very quiet and doesn't wish to talk very much, and doesn't complain. In Japan, I suppose that girls like that are very much desired." In a 1996 interview with An America, Anno admitted Asuka was his favorite female character in Evangelion because she's cute, and, when informed that Americans tended to prefer Misato, he responded with, "I'm surprised. In Japan, their overwhelming favorite is Rei. They can't handle strong women such as Asuka and Misato." Later, during an interview with The Atlantic magazine in 2007, Anno's thoughts about Rei were summarized with the following. Anno understands the Japanese national attraction to characters like Rei as the product of a stunted imaginative landscape born of Japan's defeat in the Second World War. In the same interview, he calls Japan a nation of children. However, it is worth noting that there was a surprising upset in a NHK poll from spring 2020, which had participants pick their favorite Evangelion characters. In this poll, Asuka and Kaoru upstage Rei. Is this a reflection of changing cultural preferences, a simple outlier, or compliments of the greater focus Asuka and Kaoru received in the most recent installment of Rebuild of Evangelion? Only time will tell. Regardless, Rei remains a force to be reckoned with. From concept to cinematography, Neon Genesis Evangelion showcases its love for classic tokusatsu, not to discount the influences of properties like Mobile Suit Gundam, Space Battleship Yamato, or Devilman, but Evangelion is basically an animated giant monster television series in the vein of Ultraman. In the 1966 tokusatsu series and its many follow-ups, paramilitary organizations and humanoid giants defend the world against the endless onslaught of giant monsters. Sound familiar? Not only is Anno a lifelong fan of Ultraman, it's apparently his favorite show, and he once said he would not be doing what he does today without its influence.
ご覧になっていただいて、それで今その自分にとってどういうふうに影響があるっていうふうに思いです。
初代ウルトラマンなかったら今の僕はいないですね。全然違ったと思います。あれをあの時見たっていうのが大きいと思います。
But to note a few examples of Ultraman's influence on Evangelion, as stated in the Neon Genesis Evangelion unofficial guide, the object in the center of the chest of Evas closely resembles the color timer of Ultraman, while restrictions placed on the operation period of the Eva is also Ultraman-esque. In Ultraman, the titular hero is limited to 3-minute fights due to the unfavorable conditions of Earth's atmosphere, and the light on his chest is a visual means to indicate his remaining life force. Next, during an interview with Go Nagai from the late 90s, when asked if Ultraman visually inspired the Evas, Anno said, "Eva is an Ultramanian character, sure, but to be honest, the visual inspiration also comes from Devilman." Around the same time, in another interview, Anno compared changes in Rei's character following episode 6 to that of Hideki Go's development in Return of Ultraman. Yeah, it was the same as in Tsuburaya's Return of Ultraman. Just when the relationship between Hideki Go and Matt improves, you think he will get on well with other people. Then next week things begin again from a position of estrangement. At that point something emerges of my mistrust or fear of communication with others. According to Hiroyuki Yamaga, another producer of the Eva series, the Evangelions were meant to be 45 meters, the height of the original Ultraman. But, as Yagama explained, today Ultraman would be shorter than the buildings, because they were a lot shorter in the 60s. So to keep the same scale, we had to make the Evas taller. One final stamp of legitimacy comes from the involvement of Shinji Higuchi. Higuchi is a longtime friend of Anno, and one of the founding members of Studio Gainax. In 2016, the two men directed Shin Godzilla together, and have again collaborated for the upcoming Shin Ultraman, scheduled for a summer 2021 release. Shinji Higuchi is also where Shinji Ikari gets his name, but I digress. Higuchi, who also has writing and storyboarding credits for Evangelion, is the special effects wizard behind most of the greatest titles in the last 3 decades of Japanese giant monster films. Films like the critically acclaimed Gamera Guardian of the Universe, Gamera 2, Advent of Legion, Gamera 3 Incomplete Struggle, and Shin Godzilla. Anyway, at pretty much the same time he was working on Neon Genesis Evangelion, Higuchi was working with Kazunori Ito and Shusuke Kaneko on the 90s Gamera films. It would be difficult to believe Higuchi's influence did not find its way into Evangelion. Just look at the stellar and unmistakably tokusatsu-esque visuals surrounding the Evangelions and Angels. They're treated like the subjects of a live-action Japanese giant monster film. Men in suits, miniature buildings, the whole 9 yards. Compare that to Higuchi's amazing work in the Gamera films. This guy is incredible. Yoshiyuki Sadamoto, the character designer and manga artist of Neon Genesis Evangelion, had interesting opinions on the plug suits worn by the Eva pilots. In 1996, he said, "The design concept in Eva was that the characters themselves should lean toward a relatively subdued appearance. But the plug suits, gaudy as hell, embarrassing. I mean, they almost look like, body paint. Naturally, I thought the cosplayers wouldn't even consider attempting it. But there they were, at the December 95 comic market, and the February 96 Wonder Festival. At the, I hate crowds, so ordinarily the whole cosplay scene is no more than a distant reality. But this I had to see. Specifically, I had to see girls in sky blue wigs, wearing white plug suits. I had to see it." Well, there we are. Interesting details about Neon Genesis Evangelion. Do you have any Eva-related facts you wish to share? Feel free to do so in the comment section below. And if you like what you've seen here and would like to see more Evangelion content or videos like this in the future, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, and share. Your support is appreciated. Until next time, take care.